All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to take a couple minutes today to review this first lesson from World War II with you all before you move on to the next lesson about Adolf Hitler and how he came to power in Germany. So the focus of our first lesson in the World War II was to introduce World War II and then to try to understand how World War II started. Basically, you guys said last week that at the end of World War I, because of the physical destruction that you saw here, in these two images, because of the emotional toll and destruction that World War I had on the people who participated in the conflict and their families and just the countries in general, no one wanted to fight another war ever again, especially one that was so large in scale. No one ever wanted to fight such a grand or huge conflict ever again. But then, 20 years later, 20 years after the conclusion of World War I, World War II was raging on three continents on Earth, in Asia, Africa, and Europe. So the question is, how did that come to happen? How did the world in 20 years go from let's never fight another war ever again to World War II? And the answer is because totalitarian fascist dictators came to power in 4 countries. And your focus in this lesson was to review how they came to power, how Benito Mussolini came to power in Italy, how Joseph Stalin came to power in the Soviet Union, and how the military government came to power in Japan. And then to see what it was like to live under each of those 3 leaders in the respective countries. So what I wanted to go over really quickly, first of all, some definitions of vocabulary. We covered this last week, but I wanted to touch on this definition of fascism again. What I noticed is a lot of people didn't, or just Googled fascism, and they got a very complicated definition that they copy and paste from Wikipedia. Fascism is too complicated of a concept for you to copy and paste information off of the internet, right? So this is the simplest definition of fascism. It's a type of government that emphasizes nationalism. And we know nationalism means having a really strong sense of pride in one's country. So a government that emphasizes nationalism, especially over individual rights, fascist governments use nationalism to gain power and maintain power. Generally speaking, fascist governments also place a heavy emphasis on the military and expanding their borders. So, in Italy, the Soviet Union, or the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and Japan, 3 fascist totalitarian dictatorships came to power. In Italy, Mussolini came to power. In the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin came to power. And in Japan, the military came to power. And later, the person who was the chief leader in Japan was Hideki Tojo, a general in the military. And how each of these 3 governments came to power, very similar. Some sort of instability. The new leader said that they would fix everything, and they came to power that way. Generally speaking, with Italy and Stalin, they were 2 leaders who were very, very, very charismatic as leaders. They issued or distributed lots of propaganda. Propaganda is very misleading information to build support. In Japan, same thing, sort of. Instability in the 1920s, and then as a result of the Great Depression, the Japanese military leadership promised to fix all of those problems. They used to, and this is something that Italy and Joseph Stalin did as well, the leaders used to remind people that the country was great a long time ago, and they tried to emphasize or play up that they would restore the country to that old greatness. Right? In Italy, and when these people took power, they had gained total control of the countries. So in Italy, Mussolini controlled the government and the economy and schools and newspapers. If you opposed Mussolini, you could be killed or thrown in jail. Mussolini made it mandatory for people to join the military. He rigged elections or had political rivals threatened or jailed. One of the things that Mussolini used to do as well to maintain control of information is he used to edit the newspapers in the morning. They had to be delivered to his home before they were distributed and printed. He would take out a red pen and edit the newspaper so that it said the things he wanted the newspaper to say, and then that went out to the people. One of the other things Mussolini did, he wanted to make Italy just like as big and powerful as it was during the times of the Roman Empire. So he expanded its borders. He ordered the military to invade Ethiopia, for example, and take more territory for Italy. In the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin introduced plans to make the Soviet Union as strong an industrial country as any on earth, and these were called 5-year plans. And as part of these 5-year plans, workers were forced to work. They were told where to work. They were forced to work long hours in unsafe conditions for very low wages. People who opposed him could be purged or eliminated from the Soviet Union. They could be sent to work in concentration camps or work camps, or they could be murdered or killed. Stalin, like Mussolini, wanted to expand the Soviet Union's borders and add more territory. In Japan, the military government expected everybody in the country to serve the military in some way. And sometimes that meant joining the military, and other times it meant working in factories in order to produce military goods. Disagreeing with the government, just like in the Soviet Union and in Italy, became basically illegal. And sometimes a lot of people supported the governments because these new governments in these 3 countries were making the countries strong, especially through the information that people received. They received very biased propaganda that told them that the country was becoming bigger and stronger. In the case of Stalin and Mussolini, those 2 people controlled what information went out to the people in any way, shape, and form. It had to be approved by the government to go out. And all that information told them that the country was becoming bigger and stronger, that the economy was improving. And a lot of times this meant that people had to give up their natural rights, like work. If you couldn't go on strike in Italy under Mussolini, you had to work longer hours for lower wages. In the Soviet Union, you were told what business or what industry you'd be working in. The same thing in Japan, like you could be forced to join the military. And the reason that people in these countries, there's 2 reasons they generally supported these policies. Number 1, if you didn't support the policies, you could be killed or put in jail. But number 2, these leaders in Italy, in the Soviet Union, and in Japan used nationalism to motivate the people to do these things. Mussolini said, if you want higher wages, that's bad. You're being selfish. You're only looking out for yourself. They said you should want to make Italy a great country. You shouldn't worry about you. If you disagreed with Italy's policies, Mussolini said that was making the country weak. That causing disagreement made the country weak. The same thing in the Soviet Union, the same thing in Japan. So that's what made these countries very unique and problematic leading up to World War II, is that the people the leaders wanted to build and expand their country's power through their military force and taking over other countries, and the people in each of their countries supported the policies either because they believed in them or because they were scared of being put in jail or killed for disagreeing with them. And because each leader wanted to take over territory outside of their countries, that was problematic and a major cause for war. Now, what you're going to do next is look at how Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, similar circumstances as Italy and Japan especially, and then you're going to look at how Adolf Hitler used nationalism to gain power and maintain power in Germany. And that's going to be your focus for the next week, to understand what Germany was like under Adolf Hitler. If you have any other questions or concerns, of course, there will be office hours. Tomorrow is Thursday. You guys can come to those in the morning or Friday evening. Or if you feel like the office hours times are not convenient, email me and we can set up an individual meeting through Google Meet. Whatever you guys need to to get things done. It's really important that this marking period that you are completing these individual assignments, these classwork assignments, and that you are doing your best, that you're following the directions and doing your best. The directions are not to Google and copy paste responses. They are to review primary and secondary sources and answer questions so that we have the most complete information we can have. All right, that's going to be it for tonight, and I hope you guys have a great day.